Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today I thought I would share with you some of the science fiction and fantasy books that I intend to read in the next year/2 years that I think are going to end up being 5-star reads. Obviously, I have no way of knowing if these books are actually going to end up being 5-star reads. That being said, I think it would be very interesting to have a video that I can go back and look at after I've read most of these books and see how close to accurate I was on most of these. So yeah, I'm super excited about all of these books. I anticipate loving them all because of things that I've heard and the fact that they've been recommended to me by people who know my reading taste very, very well. So, with no further ado, let's get into the books. The first book that I anticipate being a 5-star read is Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan. This book is about a young man who I believe is taken away from his inheritance or has to give up his inheritance and trains to be a warrior, and I'm getting very strong, like, coming of age, training to be a warrior vibes, which I will say I have been getting a little burned out of that lately, especially when it's paired with a chosen one trope, but I have had enough people recommend this book to me and tell me enough about it that I am pretty darn sure that I'm going to end up absolutely loving this book. The next book on this list is The Rise of the Ranger by Philip C. Quaintrell. This is book 1 in his Echo saga, which I believe is completed now at 9 books. So this is going to be a major commitment series for me. However, I have heard so much about this book right now. There's a buddy read going on with it, and the fear of missing out is killing me right now because I want to start this book so bad. I think this one is nodding to classic fantasy in all the right ways and has some great combat. It has some great emotional moments, and I've been hearing all the good things about it, and I just really anticipate loving this series. Next up is The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. Now, this is a chonk, and I did mention this in my books that I'm too chicken to read, just simply because it is massive, and the 2 other books that complete this trilogy are also massive, massive books, which is funny because I've read a ton of massive books, so it's not like I'm afraid to read them. But I think part of the reason I was nervous about it is because I anticipated really liking it a lot, or not. I'm not sure. It was one of those things where I think I wasn't sure if I was going to really love it or really not jive with it. But I ended up reading the first little bit of the prologue in this book a couple of months ago just to kind of get a taste test, and man, that prologue really gripped me right away. I'm just going to read the tiny little back blurb on this because I honestly don't know anything about it. Welcome to the Five Isles, where war has come in the name of the invading army of Sorcevier, a merciless host driven by the prophetic fervor of the angel prince Eros toward the last unconquered kingdom of Golconda. I'm getting survival, major military, fantasy combat vibes from this, and I really can't wait. And the stakes, I love it when a book hands you high stakes right away in the beginning and gives you a taste of what is going to be the tension level of the rest of the book or series. And the prologue to this book definitely had me ready for more and very excited to get into this series. Next up is a book that I'm almost ashamed at this point to put on my TBR videos because it's been on the TBR videos since like the middle of last year when I said I was going to read it the next month for the first time, and that is the First Law trilogy, starting with The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. I love character-driven fantasy, and everybody who knows me knows that, and I have been told that while this is the kind of Lord Grimdark work, that it is still, it's not like grimdark in the sense that it's just cynical, awful everything all the time, and that the characters are really, really interesting, and it's incredibly character driven. So, I mean, you know, we've got a barbarian, a dashing officer, and a torturer, and a bald old man with a terrible temper on the back as our 4 POVs. So I'm here for it. I'm very excited to read this. I cannot believe it has taken me this long to read these books, you guys. I'm so sorry. I'm hoping to vlog my experience reading these books to make up for it. Yeah, I'm very excited. I am actually very excited to read this series, and I anticipate absolutely loving it, and I think that's part of the reason why I've put it off so long, which I need to stop doing that. I need to stop putting off all the books that I think I'm gonna love, because you know, it's kind of contributing to a little bit of reading slump, and I think it's time for me to really dig into some of these books that I know I'm gonna like. All right, next up on this list is The Legend of Blackjack by A.R. Witham. This is a YA adventure portal fantasy, from what I understand, and when I tell you that my friends in the Indian self-pub community have been bugging me to read this book for so long being, you know, relatively not that long, the intensity with which they have entreated me to read this book. This is the story of a boy who is sent through a portal into another world and his adventures. It's a coming of age. I have heard so many people say that this is going to end up becoming a kind of classic portal fantasy, and I am really excited to read this. I cannot believe I haven't gotten to it yet. And again, I think that's one of those books where, once again, most of these in the stack are books that I know I'm gonna love, and I've just put them off. And I would highly recommend to anybody watching who's doing that, don't do that. Read the books that you're really excited about, because I think we often do that too much, where we're like, okay, I know I'm gonna love this, so let me get to this other stuff beforehand. That's my PSA for the day, is read the books you want to read. All right, the next book that I anticipate this book being a 5-star read. I anticipate absolutely loving it, but I'm really curious to see if that's actually the case, and that is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. This is a darling of the self-pub community. It is the story of a young boy and his mother who are swordsmen in like a section of the world that has stayed kind of ancient, from what I understand. And so the bond between mother and son, I'm very excited to read. I'm super excited to read another wuxia, like Asian-inspired fantasy. All of those things point to this book being a hugely favored read for me. I'm very excited. It is a chunk, but I'm super excited to get into this book, and I think that the motherhood and just like family vibes of this are going to be quite fabulous. The next book on this list is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. This one, I don't know how I'm going to feel about the first book necessarily. I think I'm going to really enjoy it, but this is more of a series as a whole. The Dandelion Dynasty is a favorite series of so many people I know, and from what I've heard about it, I anticipate absolutely loving it as well. I honestly don't know that much about it, other than it's heavily inspired by specific eras of Asian history, and I've just heard so much about this series. I literally cannot wait to read it. I know that it's going to be very intense as far as the depth of world building and the political intrigue and the military aspect of this book. So it is a little intimidating, and I think there are, what, 4 or 5 books in this series. So it is going to be a commitment, and they are chonkers, as most fantasy books are, but I'm really anticipating loving this, and I'm looking for something I think that will give me the characters mixed with the level of world building that Malazan has, but in an Asian-inspired fantasy setting. I'm really excited for that, and I anticipate loving this series. All right, now, one of my favorite series of all time, which everyone knows at this point, is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. And one of the things I loved about it was that it was just enough fantasy mixed with just enough sci-fi that it really created a blend that made me love both aspects of the book. I also loved how deep the characters were and all of those things. Sci-fi as a genre kind of scares me a little bit, just because I'm not that much of a technical brain, and so a lot of the like details of how this works and that works and all the technological advancements, things that exist in sci-fi, and especially hard sci-fi, are just not something that I typically gravitate towards. So I was looking for a book that was gonna give me a similar blend of sci-fi and fantasy, but with a really rich, interesting world and characters, really character-driven, because that's the thing, because I'm such a character-driven reader, a lot of hard sci-fi is more focused on the plot, the concepts, and the technology than it is the characters, and that's something that I struggle with as a very character-heavy reader. So I had heard on the grapevine in the indie community, In the Orbit of Sirens by T.A. Bruno, and from what I've been hearing from people about this book, I really anticipate loving this book. And it was kind of more of a gut instinct more than anything else. I picked up the physical copy of it because I prefer reading physical copies, and especially where I was going to go into something wanting a sci-fi fantasy experience, I wanted to give myself the absolute best jump start on enjoying it. So I picked up the paperback, and I don't know that much about it other than what everybody has been saying, that it's so amazing and super good. It's been getting really high reviews. I'm just gonna read the back of this because I will not be able to give you guys any information that's interesting because I know that little about it, but the back does a good job of selling it, I think. The last fragments of the human race are forced to adapt to a dangerous new world or face extinction. When starship mechanic Denton Castus is caught in the destructive path of a devastating war, he abandons his home and seeks refuge on a distant planet. However, this new safe haven has undiscovered threats of its own. Eliana Veston, a scout preparing the planet for the refugees, struggles with a deadly pandemic that is killing off colonists. The hunt for a cure unleashes a new threat to humanity, the sirens, mysterious beings with incredible powers and a deep hatred for invaders. So you can kind of see where we're getting the sci-fi space travel and kind of terraforming new colonization on planets kind of idea with the fantasy of the sirens, and from what I'm getting from this. So anyways, I think that this book is going to scratch that sci-fi fantasy blend itch, and I'm really excited to hopefully give this 5 stars. All right, the next one is probably going to shock no one, and that is Spirits of Vengeance by Rob J. Hayes. This is the 3rd book in the Mortal Techniques series. These are all standalones, but they do loosely tie in with each other. And this is like the same size as Never Die and Pawn's Gambit combined, the first 2 books. So I was really shocked when I got it, and it was a chonky boy. But I am so excited to get back into this world. I anticipate loving this book. I have gone into it pretty much blind, other than the fact that I know that we're going to have another wuxia-inspired world. I know that there's going to be a lot of vengeful spirits in it, and I'm hoping for another Motley Crue. We'll see, because Rob Hayes is so good at Motley Crues. But overall, I just heavily anticipate loving this book and enjoying the return to the world that Rob Hayes has created. Last but not least, we have Flames of Mira by Clay Harmon. This book I fully anticipate loving because a lot of people have said that because I love Red Rising, I will also love this book. This one has the story of a young man who I believe has some kind of chemical compound bound to his body. I don't think he dies. Maybe he does. Yes, he does. This shows... See, this is why I don't do synopses. Among boiling volcanoes under Mira's frozen lands, people like Ig, I think it's Ig, are forced to undergo life-threatening trials that bind chemical elements to the human body. One of Mira's most powerful elementals, Ig serves as an enforcer for magnate Sorello Adrian, but is cursed with flesh-binding magic that will kill him at the first sign of disobedience. When Sorello is overthrown, Ig quickly learns that he can do far worse than what has been asked of him so far. If he can't escape the flesh-binding in time, he will have to kill friend and foe alike to stop his master reclaiming the throne or sacrifice himself trying. This absolutely sounds like something that's going to be in my wheelhouse of things I love to read, so I anticipate that getting a high rating from me. Anyways, those are all books in the sci-fi and fantasy genres that I am very excited to get to in this next year plus, that I anticipate being potential 5-star reads. And I would love to know down in the comments which books are on your sci-fi and fantasy TBR that you think are going to be 5-star reads for you, and what kind of things you enjoy reading in books. Like, what makes them a 5-star read for you? So let me know down in the comments, and I hope you are all having 5-star reads. I hope you're having a great week, and I will see you in the next video.